Welcome to Private Equity Profits. Clifford Locks is a certified board of director, a trusted confidant to CEOs, C-level exec, and high-potential employees to help them clarify goals, unlock their potential, and create actionable strategic plans. Seth Greene is the nation's foremost authority on growing your portfolio companies with direct response marketing. He is the founder of the direct response marketing firm Market Domination LLC, and he is an 8-time best-selling author who has been interviewed on NBC, CBS, Forbes Inc., CBS Money Watch, and many more. Cliff and Seth interview top players in the financial sector, focusing on private equity firms, venture capital companies, and family offices, discussing developments and trends shaping the industry. These experts will share with you how they've grown their businesses and increased profit, and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Cliff Locks.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Private Equity Profits Podcast. I'm Cliff Locks, your host. Today, we have our guest, Josh Ziegelbaum, Director of the Investor Relations at the Legacy Group, an alternative asset manager that targets profitable investment opportunities with high social and environmental impact in Latin America. He's responsible for the managing investor communications, onboarding individuals and commercial clients, as well as the overall support of the company initiatives. Josh, thanks for being on the show today.
Cliff, it's great to be here. Excited to have our conversation around alternative investments and private equity.
I appreciate it. Tell me about your background and how you started the journey that brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, I'd love to start there. So I'm born and raised in central New Jersey. That's where I grew up, went to college, studied economics at Rutgers University. Out of school, I started working in the public markets. So I worked with Wells Fargo Advisors for about 6 years, climbed my way through the ranks there. Most recently was a private banker in New Jersey, and then down in Miami Beach. Had an opportunity to do a lateral transfer back in 2018, which brought me down to sunny Florida, where I call home. Currently living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Been working in private equity for the last 2.5 years. Currently Director of Investor Relations for Legacy Group. We're an alternative asset manager, as you mentioned. We invest specifically in Latin America, and we open up investment opportunities for US-based investors. So leveraging my experience as a relationship manager with the bank, carrying that over into the private equity. Definitely enjoy this side much better. It's been a great couple of years here. So happy to dive into what we do more specifically and address any questions you might have.
That's great. What are your basics regarding investing, and what do you see as the foundation of sound investments?
Yeah, basics regarding investing, I think, for one, it's diversification, right? I mean, investors should not be allocated in one asset class or one particular asset. I think the basics around investing would be diversifying into different markets, different asset classes. And before that, saving money and learning how to be prudent with your own cash, right? If you're unable to save money, you're unable to invest. So I think that's like a very strong foundation on the investment side.
We're fortunate most of our listeners are very high and ultra high net worth individuals, so they have found that foundation. Now, we do have conversations on a regular basis about the next generation, how to bring those fine skill sets into their lives. And what you're bringing forth is very valuable. What makes identifying sound alternative investments difficult, and why does someone bring in a professional?
Yeah, I mean, it's less transparent than what you'd find in the public space. I mean, we all know the large cap tech companies that we should be investing in, or that most people are investing in, whether that's the FANG stocks or the up and coming tech names, or maybe the staples that we see in our homes. Think of like a Coca-Cola or a Pfizer and whatnot. So there's so much information available in the public markets, and it's a very transparent market that's efficient. Now, with private investing, there's no liquid market on the day-to-day. So it's hard to kind of track what your investment is really worth and how it's been performing over time. So it's important to identify professionals, asset managers who have your best interests at heart, who have done this before, who communicate in a way that's consistent with your expectations. And there's a lot of people in the industry and a lot of noise. So it's important to find, who you trust, who has the right skill set in order to deliver results. And it's just much more of a fragmented market than the public space. So I think identifying professionals, diligencing them, doing your homework, Those are all things that, you need to do when you're evaluating public market investments, but it's even more important in the private space.
So due diligence and trust is the major factors to really thrive in private equity.
Yeah, at least as an investor when you're making decisions, right? And determining who to work with. So you kind of getting comfortable, reading the investment materials, asking the right questions, getting to meet the team, reviewing whatever collateral they might have. It might be videos, it might be blog posts, it might be an email newsletter, or a combination of all those things. Those are some things that we do at Legacy Group to communicate with our investors and potential investors. So really kind of diving deep into that collateral and making sure you understand it and asking questions and doing your homework. I think that's very important.
Very good. Many of our clients are using family offices, so it's really leaving it up to their team and then bringing forth those investment concepts or opportunities. What makes investing in assets in Latin America attractive? And what are the advantages of that?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of instability right now at home here in the US. And most of our investors at Legacy Group and in our portfolio companies are heavily allocated towards US-based assets, whether that be their homes, investment properties, stocks, and bonds. Everyone's very concentrated here. They might have a sliver in emerging markets, but often that component of emerging markets tends to be Asia, right? Or more global, right? So what we have going on now, and, I mentioned kind of what's going on in the US, there's also some instability in the eastern part of the world in what we typically consider emerging markets out in Asia. So Latin America is getting more attractive in my eyes. I mean, you want to be in a growth market that's emerging, and we think LATAM is ripe for disruption. It's very close to home. Where we operate in Colombia through our portfolio companies, Colombia is the largest trading partner. Its largest international trading partner is the US. So there's great relationships there. And we're seeing a ton of capital flow into the region. And we've been what we like to consider early. We've been in the market there since 2017. But other players are entering the market, the likes of SoftBank, among others. They're writing big checks. They're investing in early stage companies in Latin America. And we think it's an area that will continue to grow for the years to come.
It's exciting. You're going to see that market thrive. It's going to create more employment. It's got a very good story, a lot of history there.
Oh, yeah.
You make a positive impact. How do you acquire that local knowledge?
So our management team, myself personally, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I head up investor relations. But the two partners at Legacy Group, they live and work out of Medellin, Colombia. So we're on the ground in the market where we operate. We've been there for over 5 years, as I mentioned. So on the ground, firsthand knowledge is really how you do it. And then in terms of getting people who have been there even longer, we hire a management team at our portfolio companies, our flagship portfolio company being Greene Coffee Company. It's the second largest coffee producer in the country today. And what we've done is we brought in talent that has decades of experience. So the CEO of that company, Boris Woolner, he has 25 years of agricultural experience in Colombia. So we're on the ground and we hire talent that fills in the gaps that we need to fill in as well. So we do wholesale B2B unroasted coffee right now, and we're going more vertical in the years to come.
All right, so you got that whole growth in the coffee. Are you doing roasting or you're not roasting?
We do. We have it available on Amazon for purchase, more so for our investor base, and it's a great product. So I encourage you to check us out there. We can probably put a link here in the show notes for your listeners if anyone wants to try it. But the main model or the business model today is B2B, and we do containers of green coffee.
You mentioned the word containers. That helps us size the opportunity there. Okay. How do you develop that international expertise, and what makes you able to work across borders?
Yeah, well, we kind of alluded to that a bit in terms of the team and where they are. But in terms of international expertise, the founding partner, Cole Shepard, before moving to Medellin, he worked internationally for PricewaterhouseCoopers. So he was working in all over Asia, in Hong Kong, and other parts over there, also in Bermuda, here in this part of the world. So he's an international M&A expert, mergers and acquisitions, and he's taken that experience and he's applying it to our acquisition strategy at the Greene Coffee Company. And then the other partner we have, Adam Jason at Legacy Group. He worked in the US as a securities attorney, had a full career as a corporate lawyer, representing multinational corporations and private and public equity and debt issuances. Myself, on the investor side, I've worked with domestic and international investors in a variety of different products in my career. So all of us have international experience. And then at the portfolio company level, we hire in real local knowledge and expertise to operate the business on the day-to-day on behalf of our investor base.
Thank you for sharing that. Why is it so important to be sure social and environmental impact are part of your investments?
Yeah, this is something that really resonates with me and with our investor base. It's part of our ethos at Legacy Group and what we do through Greene Coffee Company and our other investments. One, taking care of people in the communities in which you operate, it makes you feel better at night when about your investments, right? So you could do right and make money at the same time. They're not independent of one another. So making yourself feel good about what you're doing from an investment perspective is one. And then also markets reward companies that are innovative around ESG. So if you're providing a lasting impact, when you go to sell the business or you go to IPO it, which is what our preferred strategy is for Greene Coffee Company, markets will reward the activities that you're doing on the sustainability side of things. So when it comes to social impact, we're the largest employer in the town in which we operate in Colombia, Salgar. It's about 3 hours outside of Medellin. We're providing equal and fair employment. We pay above average wages. We pay people into bank accounts instead of cash, so they're able to build credit and really become lifted up in society. And you see it when you go out there. I was out at the farms last week, and the passion that the employees have on the day-to-day, it's just incredible seeing it in person. Then on the environmental side, global warming is real. Anyone that tells you otherwise probably doesn't work in the agricultural business, I would say. And we're doing things on the environmental component when it comes to our planning practices, reducing waste and finding usages for byproduct, reducing water. We're doing a lot in that space. We have an entire presentation on sustainability and impact separate from our usual investor presentation that we have.
Is it online or it's something somebody would ask for?
They could request it from us.
Okay.
So
we'll get into your contact information a little later. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What's attractive about private equity investments?
I would say the uncorrelation with public markets and what typically makes up an investor's portfolio. We're seeing that now. It's currently the date of this recording. It's mid-June 2022 for the listeners, and we've had an unbelievable amount of volatility in the markets this year. And volatility is a fancy word for the markets going down, basically. So public markets have not been performing well. However, as we go through up rounds in our private equity funding, we've been increasing the valuation for our business. So I think the means by which it's uncorrelated with your typical holdings makes it very attractive. And the reason for that is because it's early stage, it's illiquid, and there's not a daily market of liquidity where you're waking up and you're seeing your share price change. I mean, in certain private equity products it is, but in our space, no. So we're doing single business offerings through Legacy Group. So Greene Coffee Company, it's a US-based investment offering. Investors essentially own shares in a Delaware LLC, which is taxed as a corporate. So it's like owning shares in a corporation, except you're not subject to the daily fluctuations of the market.
Excellent.
And being early allows you to capture some of that investor behavior on the back end. We've seen a lot of activity on IPOs. It's been slowing down a little bit this year, but by the time we're planning to exit, which is around 2026, we expect to be on the tail end of the recovery, at least from a recession, which seems to be around the corner if we're not already in it. So I'd say being in the private space really smooths out your returns and can allow for above average returns that far exceed what you can get in public markets.
My next question, you may have answered it. Are there recession-resistant investments? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, this is the number one question I'm hearing lately, right? Where do you go? Rates are going up. So if you're in bonds, you're getting crushed. Stocks are getting eaten up simultaneously, right? All the indicators on the real estate side are showing a slowdown in terms of activity on mortgages and things like that. So where do you go? I mean, we still think in a recession, real assets, right? So things like commodities, real estate. I think that's where you want to be in a recession. I don't see coffee consumption slowing down in the next 1 or 2 years. Maybe the way in which we consume it would, right? So maybe instead of going to Starbucks, you're drinking it at home. But I still think you're going to have that coffee consumed, right? So there's over 2 billion cups of coffee consumed a day, and it's growing, right? So I think coffee is recession resistant. It's not incredibly expensive, right? You might not go out to eat and spend a couple $100 on a dinner, but I think you'll have your coffee at home, which costs less than $1 here in the US to have at home. So I think the spaces that we're in are about as recession proof as you can get. We own farmland. We have almost 5,000 acres of coffee farmland. So that covers the real estate box. And then commodities, that's a space that we're in. I mean, you've seen you've probably been watching the commodity market in the last year. We see it at the pump when we pay for gas, if you drive a gas vehicle. Coffee is no exception to that. The price has more than doubled in the last year, and we expect that trend to continue.
So you're getting a premium price for your beans is what you're really saying at this point.
That's right.
Okay. I mean, your overhead really hasn't increased that much other than transportation. It's maybe some salaries. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the input costs have not risen at the same rate as the commodity has.
The commodities. What are the current trends you see in the general market currently or going forward? Any insights that you have? You've been out there for an extended period of time in the markets.
I'm seeing investors more interested in private equity and early stage private company investing for all the reasons that I mentioned about the instability in the US and even globally. Investors are looking for alternatives. So I've seen a very large shift towards alternative investments from high net worth individuals. Our typical investor has a net worth of, call it maybe 2 to 10 million is kind of our sweet spot in terms of clients. And most of them, they're peeling funds away from their 60-40 portfolio, and they're allocating towards early stage private investing. And they're doing so, they're not just diversifying into one project, they're often diversifying into different ones. So I'll have a guy that says, hey, look, I sold my company, got $1 million liquidity event. I'm going to put 250 with you. I'm going to put 250 here, 250 here. And then, so they're not only just looking at private, they're also diversifying within that. And I've been seeing a large shift towards that in the last couple of years.
That brings me up to ask a question about mentorship and the next gen. So our listeners have their children. They're very high and ultra high net worth individuals, and the next gen, to prepare them to thrive in the financial community and understand their fiduciary responsibility and how the funds were earned. It could be new money, could be generational money. Do you have the bandwidth? If one of our listeners wrote a check for $1 million, $5 million for their young son or daughter to come in and be mentored by you and to look at the alternative investments at this point, and really get a feel for the markets and the education that you have on a one-to-one basis. Do you have that bandwidth?
I would say so, yes. I mean, at a 7-figure check size, we definitely accommodate individuals in what they need, right? Whether that's trips out to the farms to get a better understanding of the business, time with the management team personally, talking about the project and what we do. For those types of investors, we absolutely accommodate in-person, one-on-one time beyond a Zoom call. We definitely have the bandwidth to educate and support their knowledge of their investment at that investment size, for sure.
Excellent. Most of the children don't listen to the parents, but they'll listen to seasoned individuals like yourself and your founders to be enlightened. What it is to be an entrepreneur and to grow a business and to use funds to really, you've got a good message because you got the ESG set up. The children are looking at ESG. The universities are sort of pounding it into the young person.
Oh, yeah.
So here's something that's making money, it's being managed correctly, and it's got an ESG story. So it sort of checks the boxes to make it easier for our listeners to empower their children to get more educated on it and still be pro-capitalism, because socialism is not a good situation.
No, it's not. Last year in October, we had an inauguration event at one of our facilities, and I invited several of our investors, and And one of our most valued investors brought his son and daughter, and he
Very
showed
important.
the operation. We spent time with them. We had members of the Greene Coffee Company take them out to the actual trees and explain, kind of how that part works, not just the processing facility. And they got to meet the employees firsthand, and it was a great experience for them. They loved it. So we definitely are willing and open to engage with family members of the investors.
That's a very enriching environment and story that you guys are supporting, the investors and their families. Thank you for that. Is there anything I haven't touched on that you would like to add?
I think we checked a lot of the boxes. I mean, we didn't talk about the funding round for Greene Coffee Company. I'll speak briefly on that.
Please.
So we've brought in 30 million in assets over 3 funding rounds, most recently our Series B. And as we look forward, we're expecting to open our Series C funding round in July, which is next month. So we're targeting upwards of 100 million in capital proceeds. It's going to be a blend of equity and debt. The investment offerings open for high net worth individuals, accredited investors who are interested in emerging markets and to alternative assets. We have a minimum investment amount of 100,000. However, we generally offer tiered share price discounts at higher investment amounts. You mentioned that you have some ultra high net worth investors on here. So that's kind of where we are specifically now in terms of our individual portfolio company. And like I said, next month, we're expecting to launch our Series C, and would love to hear from you or any of your listeners who are interested in learning more.
I appreciate that. How can our listeners contact you, or any links you'd like to share?
Yeah, we can put our website in the show notes. It's legacy-group.co. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Legacy Group. And you could shoot us an email at investor.relations@legacy-group.co. When you go to our website, I would encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. That's our preferred form of communication in addition to the social channels. So definitely subscribe, reach out to us, and we'd love to get in touch.
Thank you so much for your time, Josh. Your insights into how to make a positive impact with alternative investments is valuable. Thank you for sharing that insights with us. Thank you to our listeners. I look forward to being back with you shortly for another episode of the Private Equity Profits Podcast. This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC.